Could the Philadelphia Eagles trade for Jeffery Simmons? That's what we're talking about on today's Philadelphia Eagles Now. I'm Chase Senior. Hope all of you out there had a fantastic weekend and your weeks are off to a good start. Before we dive into this, I want to hear from you. This is today's poll question here. Let's hear from you down in the comment section. If you're Howie Roseman, a wheeler and dealer historically as he's known to be, are you going all in on a Jeffery Simmons trade? Type A for all in, N for no, it's too pricey. Let me know down in the comment section. So let's get you caught up on everything going down with Jeffery Simmons here. This is one of the more underrated storylines across the NFL, considering the player and the caliber of defensive tackle Jeffery Simmons is. He's right up there with Aaron Donald, Javon Hargrave, as well as Chris Jones. He's fantastic. So, new Titans general manager Ran Carthon. He's taken over that organization. Used to be the director of pro personnel for San Francisco. He signed multiple players in free agency who he had ties with going back to the 49ers. He's also released a couple of players to clear up a bunch of money on the salary cap for Tennessee, and he's put some other players on the trade block. That includes Kevin Byard, the really good safety, who I wouldn't have hated the Eagles going after if they didn't sign Terrell Edmunds. And now it's Jeffery Simmons, who could also get traded. This is starting to pick up a lot of momentum here as NFL free agency dying down a little bit. And now a lot of the focus shifts across league circles to the NFL draft. And we know that leading up to the NFL draft, a lot of trades can happen because the new league year well underway. And draft night trades can also happen, like last year with Philadelphia trading for A.J. Brown with the Tennessee Titans. So a lot of buzz right now behind Simmons getting traded and potentially getting dealt to the Philadelphia Eagles. Here's why a Jeffery Simmons Eagles trade makes sense. And there are a lot of reasons why it does make a lot of sense. He's only 25 years old, currently in the midst of his prime. He plays a position that this Eagles organization and Howie Roseman highly value, but also pay top dollar for. When Javon Hargrave left the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Eagles gave him a large contract. It worked out really well for this organization. He was fantastic in his Philadelphia Eagles stint. They've continued to pay and bring back Fletcher Cox, and of course, a couple of years ago, when he was in his prime, he landed a huge multi-year deal. Philadelphia traded up last year in the draft to draft Jordan Davis. And just because they have Jordan Davis and lost Javon Hargrave doesn't mean they can't wheel and deal for Jeffery Simmons. In fact, it makes that position better. It makes that position even deeper, and you can still have a couple of different defensive tackle combinations with Simmons, Davis, Fletcher Cox, Milton Williams, and you can interchange a lot of those players. When you think about how Howie Roseman builds the roster and constructs this team, they build their teams inside out, and that's a formula that's really worked well for them over the last several years since Howie Roseman has taken full control once again after he was banished by Chip Kelly and put to the other side of the NovaCare complex. And they invest heavily in the trenches, whether it be offensive line, defensive line, and they invest offensive tackle, guards, centers, defensive tackles, edge rushers, and beyond. So this is a position that Howie Roseman really does like to pay for, and it fits and falls in line with how they do like to build this roster. Eagles have a need, of course, for defensive tackle, and Jeffery Simmons is one of the best defensive tackles in the National Football League. Now, there's 1 year left on his deal. I don't think that keeps the Eagles from making a trade because they can either do a couple of things. Extend him to a massive contract extension, which is what he's looking for. I know last year he was looking for a contract extension somewhere in the neighborhood of Aaron Donald, which is about $30 million per year. I don't think he's going to get that much money, but in negotiations, whether you're playing football or for us in just common businesses, you start high and then you go down from there in order to get your realistic asking price. So you can either extend him or you can trade for him and use him as a win-now piece like what the Eagles did with C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was unhappy with the New Orleans Saints because he wanted a long-term deal. Saints didn't give it to him. Eagles didn't give him a long-term deal either upon trading for him, but it certainly paid massive dividends to have him on the roster in 2023 as he tied for the NFL league high in interceptions with 6. So a couple of different routes you could go with the future of Jeffery Simmons or just use him as a win-now player. In 2023, Titans did exercise his 5th-year option as a former first-round pick, So he's set to have a cap hit of about $10 million, which is affordable and honestly a bargain for the player that he is. The Eagles also have done business before with the Tennessee Titans. The aforementioned A.J. Brown trade, which happened the night of the first round of the 2022 NFL Draft, when they made that move for A.J. Brown. And according to reports, all veterans are available for the right price on the Titans roster. Simmons recently did unfollow the Titans on social media, removed all Titans pictures from his social media pages. It seems as though in the player empowerment and player power era, that is often the first step towards an athlete trying to send a message to their organization. Kind of funny, but it is what it is. Now, I'll tell you this, a lot more to get to here on the show, but if a Jeffery Simmons trade happens, we're going to cover it. We're going to do it better than anybody else. We're going to be going live, and we'll give you some fantastic content. So make sure you subscribe to the show. Philadelphia Eagles Now, the hottest Eagles YouTube channel on the block right now. As for Simmons and the numbers that he's been able to put up, first-round pick in 2019 out of Mississippi State. What's up, Fletcher Cox? That's also the school that he went to and got drafted in the first round by Philadelphia back in 2012. 2 sacks, 3 sacks, 8.5 sacks, 7.5 sacks in his first 4 years, year by year for Jeffery Simmons. And the last 2 years, he's really come into his own. Second-team All-Pro in back-to-back years, and a Pro Bowler in each of the last 2 campaigns as well. His stats in 2022, 7.5 sacks, 53 total pressures, 38 hurries. His Pro Football Focus grades, overall, 81.1, run defense, 73, pass rush, 79.3. How does that compare with Javon Hargrave, who exited Philadelphia and signed that 4-year, $84 million deal with San Francisco? So Simmons' stats, 7.5 sacks, 53 total pressures, 38 hurries. Hargrave last year, career high, 11 sacks, 57 total pressures, 40 hurries. So 4 more pressures for Hargrave, 2 more hurries, and 7.5 sacks to 11 sacks. Pro Football Focus grades, though. Simmons, overall grade of 81.1, Hargrave 78.2. Run defense, where Philadelphia had trouble last year, 73 for Simmons, 48.2 for Hargrave. Pass rush grade, 79.3 for Simmons, 90.8 for Hargrave. So there's not a massive difference in the player between Simmons and Hargrave, and Jeffery Simmons is 25 years old. Javon Hargrave is 30 years old. So you'd be going younger, and you'd be getting a player who is a little bit different than Hargrave in the sense that he is not the pass rush specialist. He's more of an old school defensive tackle, but still a really good pass rushing defensive tackle who's then better against the run than Hargrave. Hargrave is like this new age defensive tackle in which a lot of teams are paying a lot of money for defensive tackles like him who aren't necessarily gap stoppers in a run scheme, but instead in a pass-happy, offensive-laden era, they do an excellent job of pressuring and getting after the quarterback. But not a huge difference in sack numbers as well as pressure numbers last year for Simmons and Hargrave. I'll also say this. While Mike Vrabel does a good job with that Tennessee Titans defense, Simmons was not playing on a front like Philadelphia's, in which the Eagles had 4 players with double-digit sacks. It's the first time since the early 1980s when sacks started getting recorded that had actually happened. Josh Sweat had 11, Brandon Graham had 11, Javon Hargrave had 11, Fletcher Cox had 7. Simmons was not on a defensive front like that, and the secondary for Tennessee didn't have a 1-2 cornerback punch of Darius Slay and James Bradbury. Scheme a little bit different as well, and I understand that the Eagles are making a switch from Jonathan Gannon to Sean Desai. I actually think that benefits the Eagles because I think Desai is going to be a little bit more aggressive with some of his blitz packages and play maybe less quarters and less conservative defensive tendencies than what Gannon had called last year. So it is not out of the realm of possibility that if you get Jeffery Simmons, he could have a year like Javon Hargrave in terms of those sack numbers. The next question here, how much would a Jeffery Simmons trade cost? Well, for the Eagles, they're always loaded with assets because Howie Roseman is a genius. They have number 10 and 30 overall in the 2023 NFL Draft and a treasure chest of picks in next year's 2024 NFL Draft, including some really value draft capital. A first, 2 seconds, and 2/3. As far as the Eagles' salary cap, with that Lane Johnson contract restructure / contract extension, Howie Roseman and the Eagles freed up somewhere in the neighborhood of about $20 million or so on that new Lane Johnson deal. So that is an opportunity to clear some money up to absorb the $10 million cap hit for Simmons in 2023. Then in the future as well, albeit you have to realize that Jalen Hurts and that new contract going to be on the books as well, opens up some money for maybe Jeffery Simmons as well. So the Eagles, they could trade a first-round pick this year. And the thing is, if you trade 10 away, obviously, you're not going to have that rookie who's going to be affordable for the next 5 years at a position of importance and a position of need. And best player available, you could get a really good player there. But are you getting a player at number 10 who has more of an impact in 2023 and beyond than Jeffery Simmons? You can make the argument, no. And maybe you still hold on to that number 30th overall pick, or you trade 30 away, you keep 10, and you trade a first-round pick next year, knowing that you still have 2 seconds and 2/3. So for the Eagles here, there are a lot of possibilities and a lot of very intriguing possibilities when you talk about this Jeffery Simmons trade. It's fascinating for multiple reasons because he plays a position of need and of value for Philadelphia. Howie Roseman has made blockbuster trades like this. And lastly, most importantly, he is a fantastic, absolutely premium player. All right, you've been watching Philadelphia Eagles Now. Appreciate all of you for hopping on board, joining the show. Had to bring you this video from home because I've been pretty sick all throughout the weekend, and on Monday feeling a little bit better, but going in and out here. So decided to stay at home, do some shows from here, and that's why I'm at the crib. But no matter where I am, always doing shows for the Bird Gang. So make sure you subscribe, like that video, comment down below, and if anything else happens today, of course, I'll bring you it right here on Eagles Now, and hopefully I'm back in the studio tomorrow.